take on this Friday Eve. Max Kellerman, how we doing?
How are you doing?
Fantastic. Stephen A. joining us from Philly. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. How y'all doing? How's everything?
What's going on? You ready to do this?
I'm always ready.
Still licking your wounds from yesterday, or you ready to get another one?
I'm sorry, I don't recall you being on the show yesterday. Were you on the show yesterday? Oh, I forgot. You weren't in studio. You were in New York. All right. Okay.
Trash talking already.
All right.
Professional trash talkers right here. A little testy. I like it.
Let's
Coming up
roll.
in the show, you do not want to miss why Des Bryant is in the news again, and these guys debate whether he will last in Big D. But we start with that bad man who hasn't been himself lately. Aaron Rodgers will look to get back on track against the Bears on Thursday Night Football. These two teams faced off at Lambeau last season on a Thursday night when the Bears defense shut down Rodgers for a 17-13 upset win on Thanksgiving. Green Bay is more than a touchdown favorite tonight. Stephen A., which Aaron Rodgers will we see against the Bears tonight?
Well, I don't know whether the bad man that I know him to be will show up, but I certainly think that an elevated level of play will take place, and we'll see a better version of Aaron Rodgers than we have in recent weeks. I mean, when you look at Aaron Rodgers right now, the Green Bay Packers have the 25th ranked passing attack in the entire NFL. That's just putrid. That's not something that we're accustomed to seeing from Aaron Rodgers, completing just 60% of his passes, already having thrown 4 interceptions just 6 games into this season, which is not awful, but at the same time, it's not reminiscent of what we're accustomed to seeing from an Aaron Rodgers. And then I look at some of these receivers, and I think this is where it comes down to. Eddie Lacy has to be out because of that ankle injury. Niall Davis, who they just acquired from Kansas City, I'm not going to get too excited about that because Charkandrick West and Spencer Ware were both ahead of him in Kansas City before Jamal Charles came back. So that means you're a 4th stringer that ultimately lands in Green Bay, and the only reason that you're there is because they've run out of running back. So I'm not sure what kind of a running game we're going to see from them, but at least Niall Davis is a legitimate running back as opposed to Ty Montgomery coming out from the wide receiver spot to have to get in the backfield because the Green Bay Packers were devoid of a running back. So certainly there's going to be some improvement there, but I'm looking at the receivers right now, and I got to tell you, Randall Cobb, 28 receptions for 293 yards thus far this season. That's not overly impressive. A Jordy Nelson, 26 receptions for just 312 yards. Devontae Adams, 15 receptions for 218 yards. I'm looking at these guys right now, and what I'm suspecting is that these guys are having a difficult time getting open, and that's contributing to the demise of Aaron Rodgers as we know it to be at this particular juncture. Now, you're going against the Chicago Bears. They're 1-5, but let's not be deceived by that 1-5 record. A lot of their games were competitive this year. John Fox, he's not the coach for the future, no question about that, probably beyond his prime, but he does know football. He does know how to coach defense. This team is ranked 19th against the pass, however, which isn't that impressive, but it isn't god-awful. So it's going to be real interesting to see what's going to happen tonight. I'm predicting that Aaron Rodgers will have a better game than he had last week against the Dallas Cowboys, that he had the week before against the New York Giants. Maybe John Fox will try to emulate what Ben McAdoo did in terms of containing Aaron Rodgers in the pocket. But I think he's smart enough and skilled enough to figure this out. I expect Green Bay to win this game. I expect Aaron Rodgers to throw for about 300 yards and throw 3 touchdowns. I think Green Bay's going to win this game. I don't think it'll be a spectacular performance, but I do think it'll be better than what we've seen.
I think it's going to be spectacular. I think Aaron Rodgers balls tonight against Chicago. First of all, the Bears defense gives up the 6th worst QBR to opposing offenses, or rather 6th best for the opposing quarterback of everyone in the league. And Aaron Rodgers, by the way, his adjusted QBR is top 5 in the league. Rivalry game, all that stuff. It's right. The time is right for Aaron Rodgers to start balling. And part of what we're seeing in terms of his fall off, I think, is just kind of bad luck on his part, in the sense that all athletes come to the point, especially long, dominant athletes, come to a point where their bodies start to change in imperceptible ways to us, but they lose maybe a half step. I'm not saying it's noticeable with Rodgers. Physically, they have to start making adjustments, and before it really occurs to them that they have to do it, they go through a little down period, then they figure it out if they're great, which Aaron Rodgers is, they come back up. That coincided with the fact that this year, a lot of the reason Rodgers is being criticized is because he lost to the Vikings, to a head coach who makes his living stopping Aaron Rodgers. Then he plays a head coach who is his former quarterback's coach, who knows exactly his strengths and weaknesses, exploits the weaknesses, and then a Cowboys team whose defense has actually been pretty good this year and piggybacked off the Giants game plan. So that's especially the two games against Chicago and especially the Vikings, Dallas and especially the Vikings, are why people are feeling this way right now about Aaron Rodgers. And even with all that, he's still been pretty good, just not up to his normal standards. But against this bad Bears defense in a game where he really needs to ball, Aaron Rodgers, who is, okay, in the last year and a half, he hasn't given us tons of evidence for it. He's just been a very good quarterback for the last year and a half. But before that, he was the best player in football. And I tend to think when a guy's been the best player in football for, say, 3 or 4 or 5 consecutive years, that he doesn't suddenly just fall off a cliff, that there are reasons why his performance takes a dip, and there are also reasons why it can come back up. And this week, at least, it will look like his performance is back up.
Well, like I keep telling you, Max, I continue to be amazed by the fact that you're so quick to lean on numbers instead of the eye test. With those eyes of yours, I really don't understand it. I just don't get it. I really, really don't. But we'll work with that right now. The fact of the matter is that looking at the eyeball test for me, watching a Jordy Nelson, watching a Randall Cobb, watching a Devontae Adams, I don't see receivers that are really getting open. I don't see receivers that are really separating. So now, don't get me wrong. There have been a couple of occasions when that's happened. I saw Aaron Rodgers miss 2 flagrant passes, including a touchdown pass that should have gone to Randall Cobb. Yes, they're getting open on occasion. But the degree with which they used to get open before Jordy Nelson suffered his injury at the beginning of last season, that to me has directly correlated with the demise of Aaron Rodgers. And I think it's fair. Everybody knows how I feel about him, especially Mollywood. Everybody knows I call him that bad man that he is. But I do think it's fair, based on what we've seen for the last season and now season and almost a half. Based on what we've seen, I do think it's worthy to ask the question, Aaron Rodgers, was it really about Jordy Nelson? Because since Jordy Nelson has gone down, you've been a shell of yourself. We've seen Jordy Nelson come back but not be himself. We've seen Randall Cobb be there and show himself to be a viable number 2, but not necessarily a number 1. We've seen the elevation and the maturation of Richard Rodgers last year anyway, when he was playing your tight end spot. Eddie Lacy was fat last year, and that did not help. Thank goodness he lost that weight this year. He just got the high ankle injury, but he's in shape now. But when you look at Aaron Rodgers, it seems his demise has seemed to correlate directly with Jordy Nelson not being that dude. Mike McCarthy's calling plays now. He wasn't calling plays last year. So there's been a lot of changes. But it seems that he's been solely dependent on Jordy Nelson. I don't believe that, as good as I thought Jordy Nelson was, I don't believe that speaks to the greatness of Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a bad man. The flip side to it is that he's not helping me make a strong case for him right now, because he's been a bit above average. But that's not what we expect from the star that is Aaron Rodgers, with all of this discount double-check commercials, and now, sitting up there and giving motivational speeches in the locker room and swinging a golf club and making with the commercials that he's got with his teammate Clay Matthews, which is all fun and it's great. But with those commercials, with the shine, it's got to the point where now the way that he's performing, we need to ask ourselves, why is he receiving that? You got the commercials. You haven't won a Super Bowl in damn near about 6 years. I mean, what's all the praise for if you ain't going to answer the bell on Sunday afternoons?
If you're talking to the point
about where we're going to have to start asking that question.
If you don't like my numbers because they're records of events and it proves my point, I'll just do eyeball test, okay? Let's just do the eyeball test with Aaron Rodgers. Let me tell you what I see.
You can believe that.
Let me tell you what I see when I look. You take your glasses off for this one. Let me tell you what I see.
Sure. Yeah, I will depend on what you see.
Yes.
I have confidence in what you see. Absolutely. Go ahead.
That's right. What I see in Aaron Rodgers is a guy who still knows what he's doing. He doesn't look, okay, except throw out the Minnesota game. The Minnesota defense is designed, and as I said, the head coach has a job because that whole thing's about confusing Aaron Rodgers, and they do a great job of that, and they're the best defense in the league. Throw that game out. I don't see a confused Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers scrambles, whenever, even when he has to buy time in the pocket, when guys are swarming around him, he has a game plan. He knows what he's doing. He just hasn't been very accurate with the ball. Part of that, as I said, is natural variance in a guy's performance. It's not going to be the best season of his career every year. Part of it is what you're saying. The receivers aren't as open. They're not as talented due to injury, etc., as they were once upon a time. But it's not as though the guy doesn't know what he's doing anymore and isn't making the proper read most of the time. All the stuff and it's not like he's not still fast and he can't still throw. He just hasn't been very accurate recently.
Nobody, but not a single soul alive said that Aaron Rodgers didn't know what he's doing. We know that he's a cerebral quarterback. We know how smart he is on the football field. No one's questioned that. But what we marveled at throughout the years was his ability to throw that football, whether standing stationary or scrambling out of the pocket. This dude was a marksman with that football. He was that accurate. What has become flagrantly obvious is that he's not as accurate anymore. And this is while standing in the pocket, being contained. He's tap dancing. I've said this about Tom Brady, like the late, great Gregory Hines, God rest his soul. Now I'm seeing Aaron Rodgers tap dance like that. He doesn't seem comfortable. He seems inaccurate. I dare say he seems distracted. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on, but it's getting to the point where we got to start watching this dude and asking, what the hell is going on with him? Because we're not seeing the same Aaron Rodgers. That's all I'm saying.
You'll see him tonight. Here's the return of Aaron Rodgers. You're waiting for him. Here he is. Watch.
I think so, too, just because it's against the Bears. Green Bay favored by 7.5.
We'll find out. He lost on Thanksgiving last year to the Bears.
I do. And if he loses to them tonight, high alert, then it's the panic level rises much more, because that's a scary thought. The Steelers, they have tougher competition this weekend, and backup quarterback Landry Jones told his team, don't panic in the wake of Ben Roethlisberger's injury. The Steelers were told by orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Bradley that Big Ben could be out 4 to 6 weeks based on what he saw during the procedure on Monday. Sources told our Chris Mortensen Landry Jones will start when Bill Belichick and the Patriots come to Heinz Field Sunday. Then after a bye week, Pittsburgh has a big road matchup against the rival Ravens, in the week after the 5-1 Cowboys pay a visit to the Steel City. So the Steelers are in first place in the AFC North at 4-2. But will they survive, Max, with Landry Jones at the helm?
I think so. And if you look at their record in the coming weeks, you have the Patriots coming up. That's a loss with a backup quarterback, let's face it. Then you have a bye. Then you got the Ravens, Cowboys, and Colts. I'm going to skip the Browns for a second. I'm saying with a backup quarterback, let's say he's out 6 weeks. Ravens, Cowboys at home, and at Colts, I'm going to say you're going to win one of those 3 games. I don't think that's being overly generous. I think that's realistic. You're going to win one of those 3 games, and you're going to beat the Browns. That's 2 wins in your next 5 games, and then you get Ben Roethlisberger back. You're okay. And here's the thing about Landry, Stephen A. Smith. They spent a 4th-round pick on him. And when they drafted him several years ago, the idea was not that one day he's going to take over for Ben Roethlisberger. The idea is they wanted to draft a competent backup quarterback. You know, there are some guys who get drafted thinking this is going to be our backup. He's going to be well-versed in all the things we want to do, our system. And if our guy goes down with an injury and he has to miss a couple games, 3-4 games, or something like that happens, we have a guy who can come in and basically run things the way we want him to run them. Now, if you're the Steelers, and we've heard Mark Schlereth on this show talk about not just drafting guys, but drafting and development. What kind of franchise do you have? The Steelers have a good one. They draft, and then they develop them into real players. I think the assumption should be, from Steelers fans certainly, that if this was the plan, 4th-round pick on a backup quarterback, then they have developed him to the point where he can now do his job, especially when you have the kind of weapons they have on offense, a good offensive line, very good offensive line, and a great wideout and a great running back. All those things should help them. I'm saying right now, if Roethlisberger's out 6 weeks, they got at least 2 wins in their next 5 games, plus the bye. There's your 6 weeks.
Well, I get where you're coming from with that, but to me, here's where the question lies, because I'm looking at Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams, and I'm thinking that Todd Haley, and knowing that Mike Tomlin is smart enough to get that man the ball, Le'Veon Bell. I'm thinking about Antonio Brown, who's looking to get more than a $4 million raise that he got this season, and he's looking for a new lengthy contract. They're going to get him the ball more, him, Sammy Coates in particular. I get all of that. To me, it's more a question about what level of faith should I have in Landry Jones. And I'm here to tell you none. I've never been impressed with him. I've never liked him as a quarterback. And when I think about replacing Big Ben Roethlisberger with the requisite weapons that you have in the wide receiver spot, okay? And even with Jesse James at the tight end spot until Darius Green is able to come back or what have you, all right? With Marcus Wheaton, the Colts, and Antonio Brown, etc. You have too many requisite weapons where your passing game could be potent to just settle for a dude that can go in there and knows how to run your system. He needs to know how to do something. And when I think about Landry Jones from last year, 32 of 55, completed 58% of his passes. QBR was of 35. He seemed to make mistakes when he didn't need to. I didn't like his performance last year against Kansas City after he had come in from Ben Roethlisberger getting injured against Arizona, winning that game 25-13 last year. He comes in against Kansas City, albeit on the road, 16-29. For just 209 yards, threw 2 interceptions, did not look good. I watched that whole game, was very unimpressed with him. And then, Oakland, Cleveland, stuff like this. He just doesn't move me. It was the reason that Michael Vick was up in there last year. And considering the size that Landry Jones has on him, the pedigree coming from Oklahoma, having played in big games, forgive me if I expected more from this dude who's been in the NFL for 3 years playing directly behind Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not a believer in him. I'm not saying he can't get the job done. I'm saying if you ask me to take money out of my pocket and bet it on Landry Jones, I tell you to go kick rocks. I wouldn't buy it. I don't believe it.
In college,
that's just me based on what I've seen from him.
In college, he got his shot because of an injury to Sam Bradford, and he was not Sam Bradford as a starter, but he was good enough, and he was inconsistent, but he was good enough to get drafted in the 4th round. For the Steelers, excellent organization to spend still a valuable draft pick. It's not a first or second rounder.
He was no Dak Prescott.
No, he was not.
I'll tell you that much.
No, for sure not. But that's why the Steelers didn't look at him as the quarterback of the future. They looked at him as a backup. If what you're arguing is that, look, he's no starting caliber championship quarterback, NFL caliber, I would agree with that. But that's not his role on the team. His role is this. If Roethlisberger gets hurt, can you come in and spell him? I'm sure they'd prefer it was 2 or 3 weeks to 4 to 6 weeks, but it is 4 to 6 weeks, and the question is, can he hold down the fort? And I don't think this is a Whedon on the Cowboys last year. I think you're doing better than that if you're the Steelers. And if you're not, if this 6-game sample, 4 to 6 week sample coming up shows that he's not, then the Steelers need to move on and find another backup quarterback. But if
that's where
are you saying he's not good enough to back up in the NFL?
That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. I'm saying to you, I don't like him as the backup. I wish they had another backup. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't like him as a backup at all. I have no faith in Landry Jones. I have none. I hope I'm wrong, because you know me, I'm diehard Steelers, baby, and I love me some Mike Tomlin and the crew. I don't believe in Landry Jones at all. I have no faith in him. To me, the only way the Steelers have a shot to win this game is if they run the ball 50 times. Because if it relies on Landry Jones throwing the football, I'm not confident in him at all.
Well, I mean,
I don't believe in him.
I don't think,
that's what I'm saying.
Have you seen him enough to say that? Okay, you're going to get to see him right now and make that determination.
I saw him last year. I wasn't impressed. That's the only time he's really played.
Yeah, and
so if you're asking if I've seen him enough, I mean, I can only go by what I saw, which was last year, and I wasn't impressed.
And he wasn't very impressive. But I'm here to tell you that you got 2 wins in your next 6 weeks out of 5 games. And for this Steelers team, that should be enough. That's holding down the fort more or less until Roethlisberger gets back.
If you win 2 and lose 3, that puts you at 6-5. I don't like that.
Well,
I don't like
you'd
that.
like to win every game.
Not with these weapons.
But this is the reality.
Not with these. I'm saying not with these weapons. Not with these weapons. If you had a quality backup, you could win more than 2 games over the next 5, in my opinion.
By the way, last year he threw a couple touchdowns to Martavis Bryant, who he doesn't have now. But he still does have Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and an offensive line. If you have that, you should have enough to beat the Browns and maybe the Colts or the Cowboys or something like that.
And he told everyone, Stephen A., don't panic. So don't panic, okay?
Who? Who said that?
Landry Jones. He told his team, don't panic.
Landry Jones. Hold it. Landry Jones actually had the nerve to have a quote?
Yeah, he's calm.
Who gave him permission? Who gave him permission? Who gave him permission to talk? Who gave him permission to talk? I mean, don't panic. I mean, we're very worried about Landry Jones. The nerve. How about just going out there and playing? Don't panic. The New England Patriots, it ain't like the Cleveland Browns or somebody coming into town. The New England Patriots are coming into town. Tom Brady is coming into town. And this man is telling us don't worry.
What backup quarterback is going to beat? Which backup quarterback is going to beat Tom Brady and the Patriots? What backup quarterback in the league is doing that?
I'm saying you may not know if you get the ball to other people. We know what Landry Jones is, I think. Let's see. I'll do that. But I'm just confessing I'm not very confident. I really am not. Not in him.
All right.
Not in him. I'm just not.
All right, enough from you two. Let's take this to the streets. With Big Ben expected to miss a month with the Steelers, will they still make the playoffs? Go on Twitter now. Cast your vote. We'll share those results a little later in the show. Coming up next, Dez Bryant injures himself again. We'll tell you how he did it and what it means for his future in Dallas. Stay tuned. More First Take after the break.
How does he handle the big moment?
You have to take everything into consideration. For what?
Come on, dude.
He sued everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Now we have to watch what's actually happening.
USA.
I'm good.
Dez Bryant was hurt for much of last season with a broken foot. And this season, he's only played 3 games while he deals with an injured knee. And now this gentleman, the Cowboys wide receiver, was at practice Wednesday with tape on his right middle fingers. And after a potentially damaging soup accident, Bryant said he cut his fingers while chopping up some carrots for homemade soup. He said the injury was extremely minor. Max, Dez has been a headline grabber for a lot of the wrong reasons since he's been drafted by the Cowboys. Do you think this is the end of him in Dallas?
Yes, I do. And let me say that.
What?
Yeah, I think it's the end of Dez. And it may not be this week, but he is not going to last in Dallas. And let me say that I have always defended Dez Bryant. I think he has taken so much unfair criticism, it's ridiculous. Because he's demonstrative on the sidelines, exhorting his teammates, because he's competitive and wants to win. People were giving him flack for that, and then he goes out.
So why is he gone? So why is he gone?
Listen, when you take 5 minutes as a preamble, do I interrupt you?
I always make my point first. Maybe you should watch.
What didn't I just say? I think he's gone from Dallas. Now, so I've always defended him. So I am not saying he's not an excellent wideout, and there's not going to be a thriving trade market for his services. There will be. I'm saying very clearly, I don't think he's going to last in Dallas. Why? Here are the reasons. 1, they're winning without him. He's missed 3 games. They win them all. Beasley's balling. Williams is good. Like, they can do it without him, too. They're getting younger as they do it. There was a Romo-Dez thing, and Dez, who's going to be 28 this season, is getting, and it's not like he's old. He has plenty of more productive years ahead of him, but is not necessarily in this generation, the Dak, Ezekiel, Elliott generation of Cowboys. The Cowboys have a dead weight contract on their books. They will not be able to move in Tony Romo, which is why I say keep him. The problem with the Cowboys last year is no backup quarterback. They got one now. It's just not the guy they thought it would be. It's Romo. You're not going to be able to move that contract with all the guaranteed money on it for a highly injury-prone player in Romo. But for Dez Bryant, who's still only going to be 28 this season, at $14 million a year for an elite wide receiver, there'll be plenty of takers for him. You can get stuff for him. Also, I hear what our analysts say here at ESPN, Stephen A. You bring this up a lot. You and I are around a lot of smart football people, and if you listen, you can learn a lot. And my brother, Marcellus Wiley, who I he was my broadcast partner for 5, almost 6 years. I was around him 10 hours a day doing the radio and Sports Nation. Used to always talk about this. When personality trumps production, they're not as inclined to go along with the personality. That's what Marcellus says. I agree with that. And what Mark Schlereth said on this show last week, he talked about the fact that when you hear stuff start to leak out, maybe earlier this week, from teammates on the team, when anonymous sources start talking about he misses a lot of meetings, he's late a lot, what that's saying is that's starting to spill over and spill out. So if you read the tea leaves, a great receiver, I still think he has a great career ahead of him, but when you look at all the factors, I do not think it's going to be in Dallas long term.
So are you saying it's not going to be in Dallas long term because of his behavior in terms of being tardy? Or are you saying it's not going to be in Dallas because of the skill set and how it may not necessarily be needed because they're winning without him? Which one is it?
It's many. What do you mean which one? It's many factors. He's getting older. They're getting younger. They're winning without him. He's hurt enough that his production isn't what it needs to be to justify the distractions. So you're hearing the stuff spill out. That means there may be a locker room element turning against him. And he still has tremendous trade value, which you're going to need to move that money off the books because you got to keep that Romo money on the books because you're not going to be able to move that contract and you can spend that Dez money elsewhere.
Well, first of all, you're wrong on several fronts. Let me count the ways. Number one, I definitely think Tony Romo can be moved. Why? Because the one position where teams are willing to make those kind of sacrifices and stomach some things for is the quarterback position. And if Tony Romo can play, and they believe that he can play, you have enough teams with below average quarterbacks who can't get it done that are desperate for just a quarterback who can get it done because there are requisite pieces around them that they're satisfied with, that some sucker in the NFL will take a chance because of the quarterback position. I do believe that Tony Romo could be moved if indeed the Dallas Cowboys elected to and actually wanted to do that, meaning Jerry Jones. That's point number one. Point number two, when you talk about Dez Bryant, this dude is talented and he's young enough and he's fiery enough. And you got that kind of mentality, that's not something to be underestimated in the locker room, which even you conceded. So I would certainly say that's a plus in his direction. Plus, when he's healthy, he can ball, and he's a playmaker because he's open when he's not open because he'll go and get it. And he's one of those rough riders. You can't underestimate nor diminish or dissipate the value of a Dez Bryant. Point number three, when you talk about the Dallas Cowboys and winning without him, let's be clear about what the Dallas Cowboys have done. They lost to the Giants on an opener, fair enough. They played a Washington Redskins team that was in flux, sort of adjusting, opened the season losing their first 2 games, okay? All right? At that time, Washington was not what they are right now. And I believe that they'll be just fine. Like I said when I was on with Doc Walker and the crew yesterday in the nation's capital, I was like, look, winning the NFC East don't mean a damn thing to me for the Washington Redskins. They ain't been in the Super Bowl since 1991. They should have greater expectations because I believe their talent is worthy of it. Because I believe, especially when Jordan Reed comes back, I think they could potentially be big time. Now we go to the rest of the schedule. Is Chicago Bears anything to brag about? We've already discussed that. How about the San Francisco 49ers? They might be the worst team in football. Then, of course, you got the Cincinnati Bengals. We don't even know what type of damn team they got right now, which is what we will get into a little bit later on in this show. And then last but not least, we also just finished talking about the Green Bay Packers, who have been a shell of themselves. So those games are who the Dallas Cowboys have beaten. They still got Pittsburgh on their schedule. They still got Philadelphia on their schedule. They still have Baltimore on their schedule, who I respect. They still got Minnesota on their schedule. They got a road game against your Giants on the schedule. The Detroit Lions have come out of nowhere. Matthew Stafford is actually making a little bit of noise, and they're closing out the season against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. So what I would say to you is, when you talk about the Dallas Cowboys, your ultimate premise must be that they're winning without him. And I'm saying that remains to be seen. Let's see what happens as the season progresses, because even as we look at the effectiveness of a Cole Beasley combined with a Jason Witten, that's safe. Dak throwing in between the seams, in between the numbers. Not to say he hasn't thrown anything outside the numbers, because on occasion he has. He's been very impressive. He's been very poised. But take into account the fact that without Dez Bryant, the better teams will get to key better. You're not going to be able to run all over them the way you've been running all over them thus far, I believe. And as a result, you also have the element of Jerry Jones wanting to put Tony Romo back in there, and who knows what kind of friction or what kind of turmoil that will all create. The Dallas Cowboys are an accident waiting to happen, and I just gave you a bevy of situations where accidents could potentially happen. You don't let go of Dez Bryant when you know there are other accidents that could come.
Dez is an elite receiver. By definition, there are only so many of those guys in the league, and logic would normally tell you if you have one of those guys, why would you move him? Not case closed, because Tony Romo, you say, is not an immovable contract. There's some sucker out there who would take an aging, injury-prone quarterback because when he's healthy, he's quite good. I think it's when he's healthy, he's quite good. But you can't game plan a season around him. I think that's clear at this point. Sure, you could probably find some sucker to take the contract. You ain't getting anything for it. You're just unloading a contract. And now you're right back where you were last year. No backup quarterback. It makes much more sense to keep that guy and move the piece.
Whoa. That's not what you said.
Excuse me.
That's not what you said earlier. You said they couldn't move him. You didn't say they wouldn't. You said they couldn't.
Okay.
I just told you they could.
You can't move him to get anything for him. Maybe you could move the contract to some desperate team, although I think that would remain to be seen. But even if I conceded that, if there's a sucker out there among the 32 teams who needs a quarterback that desperately, even short term, would they take a long-term commitment to Tony Romo? Remains to be seen. You ain't getting anything for him.
Max,
you are getting something for Dez Bryant.
Max, listen. If you can move him, you're going to give up something. You're going to give up something because it's the quarterback.
Who's giving up what? A seventh-round
position.
Pick? You're going
no, you're not going to do
Tony
that. You're
Romo,
going to give
Tony
up something.
Romo is old.
Let me ask you a question.
He makes $20 million a year, and he's a long-term deal.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
I got a question. If the New York Jets could keep their defense intact and get their defense the way it's supposed to be, because based on their personnel, their defense should be considerably better, what would happen?
I don't think they would do it.
You think I'm just saying anything, and that's just one team.
Yeah,
if you look at some of these teams out here that desperately need a quarterback, what a quarterback could do, if they were convinced that Tony Romo is ready to go.
But what do you mean? Like, if Tony Romo had a different back, if he had spine replacement surgery? I mean, that's not the reality.
No. Well, here's the thing. The quarterback position, if you have the requisite parts around you, you can always find a sucker, without question. By the way, Minnesota, for example, what if Tony Romo were healthy and Dak Prescott was playing the way that he played? And Minnesota had a chance to get Tony Romo. You don't think they would have taken that?
When has Tony Romo been healthy? He's no longer a healthy player. That is my very point. He's an unhealthy
2 years
player.
ago.
He's a chronically he's a chronic back issue. He has a huge per annum contract, and it's a long-term deal. You're not getting anything for him. Dez, on the other hand, would free up $14 million of salary, and you would get a haul for Dez Bryant, and you're winning without him.
But that wasn't the argument. I know you could get something for Dez Bryant. He's one of the elite receivers in the game. I wasn't disputing that. I'm saying the quarterback position being as important as it is, you could find a sucker to take a chance on Tony Romo.
Vertebrae are important too. That aren't herniated. Those are important too.
Okay, no problem. We'll see.
You guys glossed over a major detail though. Dez makes homemade soup. Come on, that was like one of the most impressive things when I read the whole story. A man that can cook, you don't trade him away. Coming up.
Well, if he can, he cut his hand.
Right.
That's your argument? He can cook?
It's impressive.
Okay.
I want to see you make some soup. Does the NFL have...
I actually can make lasagna.
Oh, we know.
Believe that after your sister's lasagna.
Have a viewership problem. Roger Goodell says the NFL is looking into dropping ratings. So should the league be concerned? Find out next.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
The First Take, Your Take viewer contest is here, and you could win a chance to debate Stephen A. and Max right here on national television. All you have to do is go to firstTakeYourTake.com, upload a 1-minute video with your and only your best original sports debate. Please keep it clean, no music, team logos, trademarks, or copyrighted material. 2 winners will be selected by our show staff. So get to work, people. You could be here at the debate desk taking on these 2. Here are a few of the latest submissions.
Where is the love for Russell Westbrook? That's right, if I'm starting a franchise right now, I'm starting my franchise with Russell Westbrook, who I believe to be the second best player in basketball behind King James. He is the ultimate competitor, the ultimate superstar, the ultimate alpha player, and the ultimate triple-double machine, and my pick for league MVP this year.
The first player on that list will be Damian Lillard. He is what everyone wants. He's a tamer, under control Russell Westbrook. He controls the team, he's clutch and has a killer instinct and less turnovers than Steph Curry. Damian Lillard is the driver, unlike Kyrie Irving, Max, who's a passenger.
Kyrie Irving is a baller. He can play on-ball defense as well as shoot 40% from three-point range, as well as 85% from the free throw line, and he still shoots 45% from field goal range. The boy can flat out ball. He is the reincarnated Allen Iverson. You have to give that boy his props. And he had the MVP, the first unanimous MVP on skate, the entire NBA Finals.
Way to bring it. I like the
Russell
emotion.
Westbrook.
You got called out. They're ready to take you out.
I'm kind of liking it. I see, they're getting a little bit hyped up.
Yeah.
They're showing potential. It's not going to help them, not when they come up against us. But I will confess that they are putting it out there. I'm pleased. I'm pleased with a lot of the videos that I have seen. I must confess.
They're bringing it, no doubt about it. Yep.
No question. Meanwhile, the NFL ratings have not been bringing it. Normally a TV juggernaut for a long time, but this season has been different. League ratings are at their lowest since the 2008 season. Many consider the interest in this year's presidential election and overall cord cutting to be factors in the drop in ratings. The commissioner, Roger Goodell, though, he's got no worries.
We don't think we've lost viewers. And I think when you look at ratings, you have to go through a little deeper than that, Jared, because it's viewers, but also how long they're engaging for. And a lot of times people will leave a game for whatever reason, whether they're going to go to other programming or whether the game isn't that competitive. Those are all factors that happen. And, as an example, just on the competitive, while we have very close games overall league-wide, we haven't had the closest games in primetime. Last year we did. And in 2014 we did. And ratings reflected that in the first 5 weeks at record levels.
Stephen A., the commissioner's feeling all right. He's not worried, but should he be?
Listen, how do I put this? I think that the NFL itself, their ratings aren't going anywhere. I think ultimately football is religion and everybody will grow to watch it. What I do think they should be concerned about, however, is the dilution of the product. As I've stated a week ago, I'm adamantly against Thursday night football. Adamantly against it. I don't like it. I don't think it should exist. I don't think NFL games should be played on any days other than Sunday and Monday. I think because you have it on a Thursday, because it opened up one time last year, I believe on a Wednesday, for crying out loud. I think what you have is a situation where you're so inundated with football that unless it's a particular team that you absolutely positively have to watch, you get the impression that you're not going to miss much. I think the fact that NFL is talked about religiously by many shows, including this one, ad nauseum, all day long, et cetera, the highlights, re-aired on SportsCenter all over the place. You don't have to worry about missing much if you don't watch the games while the games are on. Ultimately, you're going to get your NFL fix. But I do believe that those Thursday night games, which is putting forth a subpar product, I do believe it's hurting the brand to some degree because you're giving them a diluted version of your product. I don't think that can be ignored, and I think it's something that they have to watch out for. But football is king in America. I don't think that's going to change, and I do believe wholeheartedly that the presidential election, particularly with Donald Trump involved, definitely is affecting the ratings because you find yourself transfixed on what's transpiring on a day-to-day basis as it pertains to this election, because we're seeing the election literally having morphed into reality television. And so because of that, that factors into the equation. Darren Rovell for ESPN wrote just last week, there was a line in here in 2000 during the campaign between, this is according to the NFL, between the George W. Bush and Al Gore. All 4 NFL broadcast partners suffered year-over-year declines. This is in 2000. Fox was down 4%, CBS was down 10%, ABC was down 7%, ESPN was down 11%. That was in 2000, when there were far less distractions then than there are now. And so if it was down then, it's perfectly understandable why it's down now. But at the same time, I think ultimately it will recover once this election is over. But they do need to get rid of Thursday night football.
No, they don't. And there's no question, I think, that the election cycle has depressed football ratings. But I don't think that this is an issue of, well, the product's watered down or whatever else. I think this is a structural issue. We mentioned cord cutting. People can pick and choose what they want to watch. They don't bundle stuff together, and how they want to consume it, et cetera. You can time delay it with DVRs and get it online and do all those things. But by structural, I mean, let's take a step back. When we were kids, there were like 5 channels. You know, like, before cable TV, there weren't that many channels. So like, ratings were much higher for each. There weren't that many choices. Then there was cable TV. There were like 30 channels. Then 100 channels. Then satellite. Then the internet. Social media. You can get video games, right? Like esports stuff. And so this generation that's coming up now, I mean, even our generation started on Sesame Street. Quick cuts, quick cuts. Then MTV videos, quick cuts. And we've been conditioned culturally for 40-plus years now, 50 years now, to not have very long attention spans. And when you think about at one point having 5 channels and now having, call it 1,000, necessarily you will pay less attention to each thing. I mean, there's just no, the attention is going to be divvied up finer and finer. So that's the bad news for the NFL. The ratings, I believe, will trend down relative to the way they were, and I don't think there's any stopping that. You can try to make certain fixes, but the general trend will be like this. Here's the good news. Relative to everything else, the NFL's in a great position, because the NFL has been largely immune to a lot of the things that have suppressed or depressed ratings elsewhere. The NFL is a shared experience. You call it religion, Stephen A. On a Monday night, on a Sunday night. You watch the game partly because you know everyone else is watching the game. You know, 20 years ago when DVDs, 10 years ago when DVDs were a big deal, you ever have a DVD and you have it there and you never watch it, but that same movie comes on TV, on commercial TV, and you sit there watching the movie, an inferior version of what you have on a DVD sitting 5 feet from you, and you sit through commercials and everything. Partly that has to do with the fact that you're aware it's a shared experience. It's a sense of community. Other people are doing what you're doing when you're doing it. Wait a minute. That helps the NFL because it's unique in that way. So even as its ratings in an absolute sense will decline, in a relative sense compared to everyone else, it is a shared experience unlike anything else. So I actually think it becomes increasingly valuable.
Max, I'm not sure I agree with you there, but I'm open to the possibility that I could be wrong on this. Let me just give you a perspective from this point. I watch stuff because of what we do for a living and how I want to be connected to what I know other people are connected to. So when we're talking about something, we're doing this for the people. We're not up here talking about what we want to talk about, and that's it. We're talking about things we know people want to hear about and are talking about themselves. So on that note, in that respect, you're right. But at the same time, because we're inundated with so many options, interest does play a role. I must confess to you, if a Thursday night game ain't that interesting to me, I ain't going to watch so much of it. I might watch it enough to be able to say what I want to say.
I want to piggyback off that point.
I don't know.
I just want to make a comment about that. You're right. people, and this is what I mean by the new reality. It's a new reality. People are not consuming as much NFL at a time as they used to. But when you look at the numbers, Commissioner Goodell is actually telling the truth. The absolute number of people watching actually can tick up, but the time spent watching is going down. And given the number of entertainment choices people have, I don't think that's ever going to change.
Well, listen, time spent watching, in my estimation, is all about interest. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, when you look at time spent, I'm sorry to put it out there, but I just think it's necessary. If you look at time spent watching other people, and then you look at time spent watching me in sports, the number's usually higher. But the point that I'm trying to make to you
that's
is
actually
that
true.
it all depends.
It's
actually true.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just true. I'm just telling the truth.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
can
bragging.
state facts.
I'm just
It's
telling the
fine.
truth.
Yeah.
My point to you is that, so even though people are spending less time watching, they still know what interests them and what does not. And I think when you point to that, what Goodell has to be careful about, he said something, and the Players Association should be happy about this. Because Goodell should have said, I was concerned about the ratings. But the fact that he was willing to enunciate the reality that people are still watching, but they're watching different, from different avenues. It's not just television. It's on their smartphone. It's online. It's all of these different things. The Players Association, who's on the record, by the way, saying they were very concerned about viewership on television. They were very concerned about attendance at games, et cetera, et cetera. They have to make sure they find a way to monetize this. Because, again, that's where the proof in the pudding is going to come from.
Let me just be very clear.
If he's saying everybody's watching, the Players Association should be able to assist in monetizing that for themselves. And if they can't, that means Goodell wasn't telling the truth.
Let me just be very clear.
What I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Let me be very clear what I mean with, in an absolute sense, they could be declining because of attention spans. In a relative sense, the NFL becomes more valuable. I'm just making up numbers here. But if the NFL is doing a 20 once upon a time, and the second best show is doing a 15, and now it's doing a 10, and the second best show is doing a 5, I'm just making round numbers. In an absolute sense, it's going down. In a relative sense, it's going up because now instead of 50% more valuable, it's 100% more valuable than the competitor. I think that's what's happening with the NFL. I don't think they have anything to worry about in that sense.
I hope you're right.
All right, let's leave it there. I think Marvin Lewis might have something to worry about, though. The Bengals coach doesn't see anything wrong with this stomp by Vontaze Burfict on Sunday. You do not want to miss how Stephen A. feels about that comment. Don't go anywhere. More First Take in a moment.
I am Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, and the people of Jamaica love and watch First Take.
Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict allegedly stomped on LeGarrette Blount this past Sunday and had a dangerous hit on Martellus Bennett. He was fined $79,000 for his actions, but will not be suspended. Here's Burfict's head coach, Marvin Lewis, on that situation.
I don't think he did anything wrong. So I think we were not in the wrong here, and in my opinion. And it's unfortunate. And that was what I have told and stood on, and will continue to. I don't think he meant to do anything. And I've been through it back and forth, and as big as this board behind me, and hell, if I can see who steps where or whatever, I seem to try to step through and try to go help the teammate that has somebody from another team has his hand on his teammate's face mask, pushing him in the face, and that's what he's trying to get to.
Okay, so he was fined $75,000 this time. He's been fined over $279,000 throughout his total career, the most by any player that's been fined since he's been in the league. Stephen A., your reaction to Marvin Lewis's defense of his player?
Well, I'm incredibly disappointed by it. And, we sit on this show and, we debate back and forth. We get a bit fiery and what have you. It's a combination of knowledge, of information, of entertainment and stuff like that. But, at the same time, there's a level of seriousness that comes with it, particularly in certain situations. And, Max, this resonates with me because of Marvin Lewis. I'm a guy that's an advocate of African Americans. I don't apologize for that. I'm not against anybody. But considering the paucity of opportunities that have been accorded to African Americans, particularly on the collegiate level and at once upon a time on the NFL level, I'm inclined to root for them. That does not mean I'm not going to call it like I see it when they don't deserve it. When Lovie Smith was struggling in Chicago, I didn't say he didn't deserve to be a head coach, but I thought it was time for him to go from the Bears. I've been an advocate of Marvin Lewis being fired for years. And it's very, very simple. I don't know the man at all. At all. I've only met him once or twice in my lifetime. But I firmly believe that any coach, I don't care who it is, that coaches in a particular place for 12 plus years and has never won one single playoff game, it is time for a change. It is just that simple. I don't care that he's been in the playoffs 5 straight years. I don't care that he's been in the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years. There's a guy by the name of Marty Schottenheimer that's going to conference championship games. And because of his inability to get to the Super Bowl, let alone win one, he can't get a job, and he's been out of the game for years. Why is Marvin Lewis still a head coach in this game? That's my attitude. And in terms of a head coach in Cincinnati. I'm not saying he shouldn't be a head coach somewhere else, but he shouldn't be in Cincinnati. But I say all of that to say this, Max. When you hear comments like that, it elevates the level of alarm that should come with him. Because we saw how Vontaze Burfict lost it with 22 seconds yet left in a wild card playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers last season that blew their chance. They had the game, he blew it. We saw him being out of control, a bit haphazard. We saw Marvin Lewis stand around and leave it to others to try and get in his face and calm down instead of being the authoritative figure that he needed to be. Now we also have the backdrop of the fact that he has now been fined nearly $300,000 in his career because of one transgression after another. Whether it's Troy Vincent, whether it's the appeals officer Derrick Brooks, Merton Hanks, James Thrash, the list goes on and on of people who have called, have emailed, have tried to talk to Vontaze Burfict. It has seemed to have been to no avail. And yet he goes out there 1 week after being complimented by the NFL for his behavior thus far after serving his 3-game suspension from what he did last year. And 2 weeks later, he finds himself in this situation again. And Marvin Lewis is going to come to his defense. If you didn't see him stomp on the leg of LeGarrette Blount, fine. What about the hit to Martellus Bennett? What about that? How do you sit up there as the coach who is supposed to be exercising control, discipline, authority, and you don't mention anything about it? What was he fined $75,000 for nothing? He's lucky he wasn't suspended. I'm rooting for Vontaze Burfict. I don't want him to get suspended. I don't want him to get banned for the league. This brother's overcome a lot, even though it's a story many have told and many people could tell about their own lives. It doesn't negate the fact he's overcome an awful lot of stuff in life, Max. I'm telling you what I know to get to this point. So I wish him nothing but the best. I'm just wondering how much better he can get if he has a coach disguised, or not even disguised, but a coach being an apologist for him, and that happens to be the same coach that can't win a damn playoff game to save his life. I just don't understand it. I really, really don't.
First, I want to comment on you commenting about an African-American coach, because it even shows up on my timeline where you're accused of making everything racial by many white people, I notice. And then I notice a lot of black people on my timeline accuse you at times of not understanding the racial perspective, which I don't understand either criticism in your case. I find and have always found you to be extremely fair-minded, sensitive to racial issues, of course, as a black man living in America, but very fair-minded. And the fact that you're criticized on both sides probably indicates that. That's the first thing. I just wanted to mention that. Secondly, about Marvin Lewis in this case, and I said just the other day about Vontaze Burfict, my problem with him, impulse control, going into the Pittsburgh playoff game, everyone was talking about it. Will he control himself? And my thought was, of course, guys don't act up when everyone's looking at them. They act up when no one's looking at them. Everyone's looking at him. Game's, incomplete to Antonio Brown. That play's over. On TV, they're showing they need 14 yards to kick a field goal, and that late hit, when the play was already dead, cost them 15 yards, just handed it to them. That's when I backed off of Burfict. I was kind of defending him a little bit before that. It's like, that's a problem. And I think his recent behavior goes on. I said he should get a 2-game suspension, 1 for each infraction. Let me just talk about Marvin Lewis's comments about that before I talk about Lewis. He's saying, look, he really didn't do anything. What I take that to mean is Marvin Lewis saying, look, this stuff goes on in the pile all the time. A guy gets stomped on. Big deal. That's the NFL. Yes, in a pile. When you're underneath a pile and no one can see. Not when you're on top of the pile and everyone can see it. It's on video, right? It's on TV. That's one. Number two, certainly when you're not in the pile to begin with. It's not your pile. You walked over to that pile and piled on. That's totally different. So I find that disingenuous from Marvin Lewis's point of view. And then also the idea with Bennett, look, he went low, not high. The ball wasn't going to Bennett. The play was already over. The ball was going down the field, and he went low, not high. That's also like misdirection. You can go low, not high when you're tackling a guy, not when you have no business touching the guy. Why is Marvin Lewis saying this? And it speaks to your point of ineffectiveness as a head coach here. I think it's because it's inconvenient for him to lose Burfict, even lose Burfict's loyalty in this case. But I don't think that's the way good organizations are run. I think even when it's inconvenient, sometimes when it's most important to do it when it's inconvenient, is you say, look, yes, you're a valuable player to us. Yes, I want you to like me. I'm your coach. I want you to be a player's coach in that sense. But we can't have this. We got to do something about this. That's not the approach he's taking. Do I think that that's a fireable offense, or that the fact that he hasn't won playoff games is a fireable offense? I actually don't. I think last year the Bengals were finally really showing you signs in the regular season that they could make progress in the playoffs, win at least a game. And it wasn't the coach's fault that the quarterback got hurt going into the playoffs. So I have a little more leeway for Marvin Lewis in this regard than you do. But I don't think – but I just wanted to mention off the top about the racial sensitivity that you have to this issue, given that it's a black coach.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And let's just put it out there. White folks, some white folks, not most, not all, but some white folks call me racist. And some black folks call me an Uncle Tom. I don't give a damn about either side. I'm a fair-minded individual. I've been a journalist for nearly a quarter century. And I'm not going to, I would not have been able to be as successful as I am if I have biases and prejudices without being fair-minded. I pride myself in being fair-minded. Right is right, wrong is wrong.
Whoever says that about you is not paying attention. They're really not paying attention.
I don't worry about it. It doesn't faze me at all. I don't lose any sleep over them, and I tell them to kiss off to their face if they came to me with that. To be quite honest with you, I don't give a damn. And as far as me, touching on issues pertaining to black people, I challenge anybody. I put my record next to anybody in terms of the battles that I've fought on behalf of my community and continue to fight to this very day, having the platforms that I have available to me. Having said all of that, I can't ignore the fact that Marvin Lewis has been a coach in his 13th, 14th year in Cincinnati. He has not won one single playoff game. I do think there comes a moment in time where you need to look at somebody else and give them a chance to succeed, and especially when you're not willing to step up and acknowledge when one of your players, dare I say, may be a bit out of control. That doesn't mean you suspend or get rid of Vontaze Burfict, but it does mean that you got to employ some authority so he understands that he has to answer to you if he doesn't do the right things. And I don't think that's the case with Marvin Lewis, in my personal opinion. I don't know because I don't cover the team, but watching from afar, that's what I see.
We got to leave it there. When we come back, we go to the association. Kevin Durant was caught giving a high five to himself in last night's preseason game, and he probably won't be getting many high fives from Russell Westbrook anytime soon. We'll explain when First Take returns.
You're watching First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Cleveland sports fans, join Stephen A. Smith on the road Tuesday. He will be at Town Hall Restaurant for a live broadcast of First Take. We're celebrating the Indians and the World Series and the Cavs ring ceremony on opening night for the champs. Plus, we'll have special guests and giveaways. Doors open at 8 a.m., so come down and represent Cleveland with Stephen A. and First Take. All eyes were on Kevin Durant this offseason after he made the controversial decision to leave the Thunder to create a super team with those Warriors. Since making the move, Durant and his former teammate Russell Westbrook's relationship has completely fallen apart. And in the latest Rolling Stone magazine, Katie explains they never had much of a friendship at all, saying, "We had our own cliques that we hung with on the road. Russell had his guys, I had mine. It was never a bad thing. It's just how it was." Stephen A., has this article changed your mind on your opinion of Durant, hearing that they weren't that close to begin with?
Not at all, because it was never about him not staying in Oklahoma City. And I think that's where everybody confuses my position with that of a Charles Barkley or Reggie Miller and others. Every time he speaks, it seems to be some kind of shot at Oklahoma City. We have to remember that when Russell Westbrook went down, Kevin Durant was in the semifinals against Memphis. They won one game and then lost 4 straight. It was without Russell Westbrook. Together, they went to an NBA Finals. Together, they were within one game of another NBA Finals last year. But he has every right to decide that he wants to leave, that he doesn't want to be there anymore. There were people in defense of Kevin Durant. There have been many people who have looked at Sam Presti, who has established himself as just a great executive in the game, by the way. They felt like, hey, while other teams were getting better, Oklahoma City was interested in getting younger. Gone were the James Hardens of the world, the Reggie Jacksons of the world, people like that. They seemed to be a team devoid of that quintessential third option, which is something that frustrated Durant apparently from time to time, which was something that was alluded to in this Rolling Stone article. But in the end, all of that makes the point for why he left Oklahoma City. And I think it's a slick effort to change the narrative. So let me bring everybody back home. No one should have a problem with Kevin Durant leaving Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant had the right to leave Oklahoma City. He gave them 9 great years. He never cheated them. He was a perennial all-star and superstar in this game. Leaving Oklahoma City is not the narrative anyone should focus on. I disagree with Barkley on that front. I disagree with Reggie Miller on that front. All of those guys. I have no issue with Kevin Durant leaving Oklahoma City. It's who you chose to go to. Choosing to go to an already established champion who should have been 2-time champions, with already a 2-time league MVP and a superstar, with already the greatest shooting backcourt in history. When you are that great, with the power in your hands to make that much of a difference in terms of balance of power, whereas you could have gone to at least 4 or 5 other teams and made them the instant favorites, you chose to go to the team that just beat you a month earlier. That's the issue. That is the thing that has somebody like me looking at Kevin Durant. Has nothing to do with him leaving Oklahoma City. And as it pertains to Russell Westbrook, his boy, all right, y'all might not have been that close, but that's not the impression you gave. And at the end of the day, he was your teammate for 8 years and an all-star just like you. Max, you and I just started working together. If I leave, my brother, you're going to be the first to know. It's just that simple, because I'm not going to do that.
You can't take the L's anymore, huh?
Thing to do.
You can't take the L's anymore. It's only been a couple of months, and you're already ready to.
Whatever.
Look,
I ain't leaving.
I want to address first the dynamic Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and I think it comes down to this: the beta can't be better than the alpha. You know, big brother can't, or little brother Westbrook can't really, in a psychological sense, be big brother. That's the problem. Beta, which is Kevin Durant's personality compared to Westbrook, it seems, at least on the court, is better. Durant's better than Westbrook, but he doesn't have that same personality. I think that's always going to be a problem on any team. It was even a problem when LeBron first joined the Heat, in my opinion. He had more of a beta personality at the time on that team than Dwayne Wade, but he was the better player, and it caused chemistry problems that they had to resolve the following season when they finally won the championship. That's one. 2, you mentioned when Westbrook went down, Durant won a game and then got bounced 4 straight. When Durant went down, they missed the playoffs. I mean, Westbrook balled out of control, and they missed the playoffs, period. Durant's this incredible force on the basketball court, and that's why you and others have a problem with him specifically joining the Warriors. I want to get to that point now. It's not just that he left. He could leave Westbrook. It's his decision. He was forced to play in OKC by the draft and everything. For the beginning of his career, he's finally a free agent, free to make his own decisions. Your problem is with the decision he actually made, not to leave, but to join that team, the Warriors. Let's not forget, the Thunder had to choke for the Warriors to win. They were about an evenly matched team. He would have gotten more credit, and he had to be aware of that, by staying on the Thunder. The following season, and with Billy Donovan, they were actually making strides past, I think, where Brooks was. Even though they got to one finals with Brooks, it looked like, hey, they have a real future. Maybe they could win a championship. And he left. He had to be aware that there was going to be criticism coming along with that. Why the Warriors? It comes down to this, and I want to address Charles Barkley and Reggie Miller and others. Why the Warriors? Because that's what it takes to beat LeBron James. Because LeBron James is way better than every other basketball player in the world. And when I started to forget that last year, looking at Steph Curry winning the MVP, LeBron reminded me and others like me, no, it ain't close. It's LeBron and then 10 different levels, and then everybody else, including KD and Steph Curry, and they recognized that. KD recognized that and joined up with the Warriors. That's a response to LeBron James' greatness. In terms of Barkley not ever doing that in his career, according to him, love me some Charles Barkley. Let me tell you the smart move for Barkley and Reggie Miller and guys like that in their careers. What they should have done if they wanted a championship, and they did it the good old-fashioned way and didn't get a championship, was that year when they were free agents and the Knicks with Patrick Ewing looked like they were making moves on the Bulls, and they wound up with Larry Johnson and Chris Childs in free agency. Remember that year? Or Allen Houston? If that would have been Reggie Miller and Charles Barkley on the Knicks, maybe they get a championship. So, I'm not knocking their decision. They chose to do it their way, but they are now ringless because you weren't going to overcome Michael Jordan any other way. What I'm telling you is LeBron is this era's Jordan. If you want to beat him, you better join up forces with a team like the Warriors, which is what KD did.
Max Kellerman, if KD had decided to go to Miami with Hassan Whiteside, who was willing to shove aside an additional $4 to $5 million to ensure that they could get KD, and Dwayne Wade, as a result, would have stayed in Miami, Miami could not have beaten Cleveland?
Nope. Would have been a good series, though. You know, you and I both know it's a tough out for Cleveland. That's all.
Hold it. Hassan Whiteside, Dwayne Wade, Kevin Durant,
Dragic,
and that crew in Miami could not, Dragic, and that crew in Miami could not have beaten Cleveland?
No, when push comes to shove, LeBron would beat him, and we all know it. Stephen A.,
who would you pick? I don't know that. I don't know that.
When push comes to shove, we would both be sitting here. We'd be in the pre-production meeting when the playoffs rolled around.
You
We'd
just
be like,
talking.
how are we going to talk about
you
this?
Asking
We both
questions
agree
and then
Cleveland's
answering
going to
it.
win.
You asking questions and just you asking questions and answering it yourself.
I'm good like that.
I'm telling you, if Kevin Durant was with D. Wade and the rest of the crew in Miami, if they were all together in Miami, I would have picked them to beat Cleveland. I would have. Absolutely. D. Wade with Durant.
Yeah.
Hold on. And by the way, because remember, we didn't know that Chris Bosh was going to have the health issue that he had. But I'm saying
yes, we did.
I'm thinking at the time, because remember, they were saying we're going to leave Chris Bosh out.
Was healthy, yes, with Whiteside and Bosh and Dragic and Durant and Wade, they would have had a shot to win. But we knew Bosh wasn't healthy.
No, we didn't. I'm telling you, we didn't. That's
Guys,
what I'm saying.
we gotta go to break.
At the moment.
We got to go to break.
Go
So
ahead.
what happens when we have two alphas right here? And speaking of alphas, Bart Scott, can't wait, and Big Ben had their fair share of battles in the Pittsburgh-Baltimore rivalry, but you don't want to miss what Mr. Scott had to say about Big Ben. That's coming up next.
What's going on? This is Kevin Hart, a.k.a. Long-Faced Little Body, and right now you're watching my favorite show. I'm talking about First Take, without Stephen A. Smith.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
In the same game that Ben Roethlisberger tore his meniscus, Bart Scott, a former NFL linebacker turned CBS football analyst, made a comment at halftime calling Big Ben a, quote, drama king. Roethlisberger responded in comments to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. What did I do to deserve that? All I've ever done is keep playing and keep my mouth shut. You just have to shrug that stuff off. But I would tell him to go see John Norwig, our trainer, and check out my medical file. It's pretty thick. You can't make that stuff up. Mark Schlereth here with us. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're good.
Good.
How do you feel about these comments?
Yeah.
Fair or foul?
No, I think they're foul. I mean, I think you look at the history of Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger has played injured. The one win that Landry Jones has when he's replaced Ben Roethlisberger, if you remember, he got hurt like in the fourth play of the game, and Ben Roethlisberger came back off the bench injured to play that game. I remember a game several years ago where Ben Roethlisberger had his nose broken against the Baltimore Ravens. You remember that? Where he has, and they're saying, no, there's nothing wrong here. His nose is on the side of his face. He looks like this. They're like, no, he's fine. It didn't break his nose. He actually breaks his nose, and he goes back in and plays that game. So there is, I mean, the guy has been hurt. There's no question about that he's been hurt. With that said, the guy has shown up. The guy has played. The guy has played injured. The guy has played through pain, all those things.
He's drama king. Drama king in the sense that he'll lead you on a fourth-quarter comeback. That's dramatic. Of course, and Roethlisberger, what is he, not a tough guy? Of course he's a tough guy.
Right.
We saw that from day one. But fair or foul, I don't even think it's really an issue of that. It's not correct, but is it foul? Look, Bart Scott, Baltimore Raven, period. You have to take it with a grain of salt. The really good franchises with real rivalries will train those players up in the culture of those rivalries and will make an imprint that lasts forever. Like if you talk to like Andy Pettitte today, he hates the Red Sox. That's the way you are brought up in the culture of that organization. Wisconsin and any one of those Big Ten rivalries, Michigan and Ohio State. That's the way it is. So when you have a former Baltimore Raven who's been through those battles commenting on the quarterback and it was his job to go get that guy, and that guy used to beat him in big games, and well, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Consider the source. Is it true? No, but it's a Baltimore Raven.
Right. But that's why it's foul, because it's not true.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Steve.
But not only is it not true, that's not only is it not true, that's not something that you take with a grain of salt, and here's why. First of all, I know Bart Scott. He's a friend. I respect the hell out of him. Let me put that out there just in the interest of full disclosure. But I respectfully disagree with him here because we're playing in a day and age where every excuse under the sun can be used for guys not playing. And here's a guy, Ben Roethlisberger, that last year when he missed 5 starts, it was the most starts he has missed in any season in his career. And we all know the bevy of injuries he's been subjected to. We've seen the hits that he has had to absorb. He's 34 years of age. He's never missed more than 5 games in a season, which was last year. Prior to that, it was 4 twice. 1 year, 3. That was about it. He's been Mr. Reliable despite the punishment that has been inflicted upon him. So if you are a Bart Scott and you look at today's NFL culture, it's not that it's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he went out and called them something, far more incendiary or anything like that. So I want to put it in its proper perspective. But I also want to say that Bart Scott is a rough rider. He's one of those dudes. He's hardcore. He comes at things that way. That's the way he played to some degree. Correct me if I'm wrong, Schlereth. So the point is, knowing that and knowing how the game has transformed and how relatively soft the game today is considered to be compared to what it once was. And to watch Ben Roethlisberger withstand the test of time all of these years just by showing up and being out there and absorbing punishment in ways that most other quarterbacks have not been able to. It was surprising to me that there wasn't a greater level of a respect and appreciation for the football player that Ben Roethlisberger has proven to be from somebody like Bart Scott, who is quick to point out how soft somebody is, and he's usually right when he says it. It's just surprising to me.
No, it surprises me as well. And I understand your point about having that rivalry, but you also have to respect a guy that has done it as well as Ben Roethlisberger has done it, who has won championships and consistently carts himself out on the football field while he's injured, and a guy that has not been provided the protection that a lot of quarterbacks get provided in this day and age of the National Football League because he is that big, he is that physical, and guys let him probably take, or officials let him take more hits than the majority of guys. And there's several of those guys you can put in that list. Guys like Ben Roethlisberger, guys like Cam Newton that probably don't get the benefit of the doubt and take too many hits and still continuously go out there and play week in and week out. So those are the reasons. I understand the rivalry thing, and I understand, like, listen, man, you know, me and the Raiders, I hate the Raiders with a white-hot intensity of 1,000 suns. It's just the way it is, right? I'm rooting for them to lose. But I still respect the guys who end up going out and playing on a week-to-week basis, and playing hurt especially is a badge of honor in this league, and he has done that. Therefore, I don't look at him as a drama king, if you will. I just think that comment's a little bit out of bounds.
It was interesting that of all players, you think about Roethlisberger, who before he was even a great quarterback was a great football player. Like, you always used to hear about that. Even if he had a bad playoff series, but then he makes a tackle in the open field in the playoffs because he's this tough football player that all the football types like. And for him to get that reputation, I think Stephen A. may be onto something. Maybe that has as much to do with the culture of protecting the quarterback and the kind of envy that can produce in other players as it does with the actual rivalry between the Steelers and the Ravens, although I think that plays into it.
No quarterback extends the play better than Ben Roethlisberger.
No, and I think there's a great point there that defensive players have a certain disdain for the quarterback position because you do play in a red jersey. You're not allowed to hit those guys. And you want to talk about drama kings. I mean, there's a bunch of quarterbacks that are begging for flags every time. I mean, if you even look crossways at a quarterback, they're begging for a flag, and oftentimes they're getting it. I don't see Ben Roethlisberger doing that on a consistent basis.
Let's also put into perspective the job that Bart Scott has now. He is a commentator, and you do have, and I don't want to speak out of turn, Slereth, you would know this better than me, but, I always try to reach out and help brothers in this industry, white, black, otherwise. They're my brothers. I always try to help anybody that wants to get in this business and wants to do well. Anything that I can do to help, I wouldn't hesitate, Bart Scott included. But I do find that you have some players that are highly reluctant to be overtly critical, and then you have some other players that want to be very successful in this business and don't hesitate to do so because they're trying to be successful in this business. And my whole point is just be real. Be real, true, and authentic to who you are. And if you're Bart Scott, I just find it very, very difficult to believe that when the word drama queen comes into the equation, Big Ben Roethlisberger is somebody you would be thinking about. With the injuries that he has absorbed and the things that he has played through, I find it very difficult to believe that that's the dude that you would attach drama queen to. Yeah. That makes no sense to me.
100%. The only drama king he is what you described as earlier, the dramatic moments. Coming up next, Mark, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Derrick Rose is cleared of liability in the civil suit against him. So where does the former league MVP go from here? That discussion is next. A federal jury in Los Angeles Wednesday found that a woman's rape claim against NBA star Derrick Rose and two friends was not credible, handing the men a victory in a high-stakes civil trial. Rose said in a statement that he's thankful that the jury rejected the lawsuit that accused them of gang raping Rose's ex-girlfriend when she was incapacitated from drugs or alcohol, and that it was important to prove he did not do what he was accused of. Stephen A., where does Derrick Rose go from here?
Well, he's got to feel very relieved right now that this case is obviously behind him since he was not found liable. But I think that, he has to accept the reality of two things. Number one, the image that he once had is gone. Fair or not, based on the accusation alone. If you recall, Max, remember how pristine this dude's image was? Like, I don't know any way to put it other than he is the closest NBA athlete to Tim Tebow that I ever saw in terms of being considered just an innocent, great kid. Well, you don't look at him like that anymore. Now you sit up there and you say, okay, he wasn't liable and wasn't guilty of what he was being accused of, according to the courts, fine. But you're going to remember that. And then that gets you to his game. And when you look at his game, the Derrick Rose that was the league MVP in 2011, the Derrick Rose that had you believing that somehow, some way, Miami, with LeBron James and those boys, weren't going to be able to go to 4 straight NBA finals. The Derrick Rose that really was in the discussion with Russell Westbrook as arguably the most athletic point guards in the history of the National Basketball Association. That's no longer the case. And so now we find ourselves looking at him as just a regular old player that's got some stuff to prove, that's got to remind us all of what this dude is capable of. Last year he played 66 games after playing 51 the year before. And you remember, he missed the entire 2012-2013 season and then came back 2013-2014 and only played 10 games. So over the course of 164 games, he played in a grand total of 10 games over a 2-year period before playing 51 in 2014-2015 and playing 66 last year, where he averaged 16 with 4.7 assists per game. New York needs him to be more, to do more. And we know he wants that money, but we also heard him talk about how he wants to be able to walk to school with his kid in 10 to 12 years from now. So we're waiting to see this dude elevate his game, and he would need to do just that to also elevate his image. Because if he doesn't, he's just going to be an average player, and then everybody's going to remember what he was accused of. And that's not something he wants, particularly in the New York market.
First, let's start in the beginning with the charges and what just happened. He maintained his innocence the entire time. Many people who looked at it felt like he had a good case, or rather the case against him was probably not going to win. And in fact, that's what happened. He was found not liable of this, which is a very serious thing. So I don't want to just brush that off as though we're not dealing with that as though it's a serious thing before we get to basketball, because it is. And to your point, he was the guy everyone used to love to love. You know, there are the love to hate guys, and there are a couple athletes here and there who everyone seems to love to love. That was Derrick Rose. And that's gone forever, along with the player he used to be, due to catastrophic injury in the case of his actual game. But I want to get to what maybe he can be now going forward. I think that you look at him in the second half of last season, he was better than in the first half, it seemed to me. Significantly better. He was getting better as the season went on. And now this year, not only with a new start in New York and now found not liable of this serious situation, now with a new start, with Joakim Noah, who was obviously brought in for him, with 2 other excellent offensive options. Let's not forget, when he was 22 years old and won the MVP, that should have gone to LeBron James. But nevertheless, Derrick Rose performed at a very, very high level for a 22-year-old to even be in consideration, let alone win that award. The following season, before he got hurt, he was better. He was progressing in his career. He was now more of a pure point guard than he had been even when he won the MVP. It was amazing to watch, age 22, 23. Then he has this catastrophic injury, and he's never fully the same. Part of the reason he's not the same is physical. A part is psychological. How hard do you push it? Well, now 1 more season removed from the catastrophic injury, I'd expect his psychological state with respect to his injury to be better. The fact is he's in a contract year, and he's with a team where Carmelo Anthony and Kristaps Porzingis can do a lot of things offensively, and Courtney Lee can spot up and shoot and do all those kind of things, and Joakim Noah's there. He's familiar with them to do the dirty work and all that stuff. I think there is real reason, health permitting, to be optimistic about Derrick Rose, what he can be for the Knicks. What does that mean? That means, let's say, 75% of the player he was at his best. 75% of a prime Derrick Rose is a hell of a player. And I think that he can be that if he stays healthy. I think there's reason for optimism with Derrick Rose.
I disagree with you that 75% of Derrick Rose is still a prime player. I don't believe that. And here's why I don't believe that. Because Derrick Rose's game was predicated on athleticism. his ability to get to the basket, etc. Now, there's no doubt that he's an upgrade from Jose Calderon. I mean, who the hell is it? You might be. But the bottom line is, and Jose Calderon's a very nice guy, just not a very good player as far as I'm concerned any longer.
Right,
Anymore. He once was, but not anymore. But 75% of Derrick Rose, 75% of Steph Curry or somebody like that, yes, because they could shoot. But because of athleticism, 75% is not good enough. You need more from Derrick Rose than 75% if the New York Knicks and him are going to make the kind of noise we hope they're going to make.
One last thing I want to add before we go to break. I thought it was kind of embarrassing and tasteless for the jurors to be taking pictures after with the seriousness of the allegations, treating it like a photo op, and then the judge saying, play well, but not against the Lakers. Like, be professional. Such a groupie comment with such a serious matter.
It's not just about the professionalism. It brings into question their objectivity in judging the case.
Of course. Even better point. When we come back, more First Take. Stay here.
First Take is presented by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here. And in part by Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty stands with you.
It's here, folks. The First Take, Your Take viewer contest, and you could win a chance to debate Stephen A. and Max right here on national television. All you got to do is go to firstTakeYourTake.com. Don't tweet them to us. Go to the website. Upload a 1-minute video with your best original sports debate. Keep it clean, no music, team logos, trademarks, or copyrighted material. 2 winners will be selected by our show staff. Get to work. We want to see you guys here in Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN headquarters. Schooling. I want to see you guys schooling these 2. Here's some submissions.
Kevin Durant, allow me to school you on the rules of the game. If you leave your former wife or your former girlfriend, and you now have a new wife or a new girlfriend, you know what you don't do is go and bash the former wife or the former girlfriend. Stop talking about Oklahoma City. Stop taking shots at Russell Westbrook.
I just think it's showing the true lack of affinity that he has for the franchise, and especially for Russell Westbrook. Unfortunately, we're getting an eye into his side of things, and it doesn't really seem that he was as emotionally invested as we had all assumed, and I think that's hard for people like Stephen A. Smith and Charles Barkley to understand.
LeBron James, he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They went 61-21, okay, in that same season. Now, you mean to tell me that they were a #1 seed in the playoffs? He had to go to Miami to win a championship? Come on, man. With KD going to the Golden State Warriors, they may be chasing rings, but the man is going to a better situation. Just the same thing as LeBron James did back in 2010.
I think they just took it up another level.
The woman who just sent in that submission, she was excellent. And then this guy, LeBron James, that's the new LeBron James. That's the new one. Yeah. What flavor?
Stephen A., what you think?
Actually, I didn't think the lady was excellent. She confused my comments with that of Charles Barkley and lumped us into the same sentence. Yeah. So what she showed me is that she's not listening well enough. She needs to try again, send in another video so we can give her a chance to correct herself before she ends up on this show getting corrected on national television. I'm just saying. I'm being very nice.
Packers, Bears, who you got?
LeBron James.
Packers.
Packers, Bears?
Aaron Rodgers, Packers. They got to show up tonight.
Rodgers throws.
If the Bears win, panic meter. How high, Stephen A., for that bad man?
Well, listen, forget that. Who you picking, Molly?
Packers.
Let me just tell everyone on behalf of Aaron Rodgers, let me tell everyone, relax.
Yeah, don't panic. Bye-bye.